Fred, to me, is extraordinary and was a marvelous person, mainly because of his caring for other human beings, whether it be as a group or, more importantly, individually. Many of us, when we have walked into his office to ask the question, and before you ever got a word out, to quote him, "How you doing? How's Ann? How's Nancy?" And he would get into a conversation about you because he really cared about you. And that carried forward to his treatment of students, to faculty, except when you saw that red face come in, right? And
I've seen it.
I've known Fred Hart's my whole life. I was fortunate to be one of his 8 kids, and I got to be one of his students, and even one of his neighbors.
I'm Tim Padilla. I've known Fred Hart since he started law school here at the University of New Mexico in 1972. I was on the Student Bar Association for my first year, and I was student bar president in 1975, and I got to know Fred Hart real well.
I'm Bob Desiderio. I have known Fred all of my adult professional life. He was my first law school teacher in 1963. I'm here because of him, and we have been colleagues and more than that, friends for over 50 years.
I know Fred Hart because Joan Hart happened to be in a speech I gave, and I joked around a lot, and they were looking for a woman law professor, unbeknownst to me. About 3 days later, I'm sitting in my little windowless cubicle at the New Mexico Attorney General's office doing state tax appeals upon me. Hello? And this is Fred Hart, MD down there at the law school. I said, "Oh yeah, Fred, I know who you are. What can I do for you?" He said, "Well, we've got 18 women law students looking for a woman law professor. We hear you're pretty good. Do you want to come apply for the job?" I said, "Sure, when do you want me?" He said, "How about Monday at 9? That's how I met Fred.
I'm Helen Padilla, and I know Fred Hart because I attended the Pre-Law Summer Institute, which is a summer program for Native American and Alaska Natives, and he is the founder of what is now known as the Pre-Law Summer Institute. Fred is extraordinary because of his humility and his caring for many students and attorneys and the practice of law, and especially for the Native American attorneys that have gone through the Pre-Law Summer Institute. The Pre-Law Summer Institute is a national institute that has provided the opportunity for Native American and Alaska Natives to go through the program the summer before they attend law school. And that legacy of Fred's has impacted Indian country and has impacted the practice of law throughout the country.
Fred Hart was extraordinary in many ways. In my life as a student, I never met a man that cared so much for the students. That's what he did. He loved students. He opened up the law school to the minorities and the women it was totally amazing. You go in and talk to him in his office and he would just open up. It was just an amazing experience for me, and I'm sure for all the students at the time, but he was a Superman, in my opinion. And I loved him very much because he was so good with all the people. And he, especially, and I'm speaking for the minority students and the women law students who he opened this law school up for. And he did so many things outside of that, but you could go in and talk to Fred, well, I'm going to say almost every time, but you could go in and talk to Fred anytime, and he would welcome you in, no matter what he was doing.
Fred was extraordinary in my opinion, because he had the heart of an entrepreneur. He came to New Mexico from Boston. He didn't know about American Indians. He didn't know about Hispanics. Women in law school were not part of his background, but he got to this very diverse, interesting small state and immediately saw the opportunity to transform the state by providing legal education to people who had never had that opportunity before. And that's what he did. Fred could have done anything, but luckily for New Mexico, he chose to come to UNM Law School.
Those of you that knew my dad well knew that, like, he had this same spirit away from the law school. His love for my mom was legendary, and really was. I mean, there was nothing. I've never seen anything like it. But being one of his kids was extraordinary experience, as you can probably imagine. I mean, how many students have asked me, "What's it like to come home and he's the guy in your house?" You know, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, one of the things is, my dad taught us by example, like a lot of our parents do, but he also taught us to solve your problems by thinking hard about what the problem is. And maybe it's because of the Socratic method that you guys all use here, but he would, when you came to him with a very difficult problem, whether it's personal or professional or anything, he would approach with pure love and then ask questions. And he would, through his questions, you would find the way you needed to go by him asking questions. He never said, do this, don't do this, never do this, do this. There was no, he was the least judgmental person I knew. He would, you know, he had extraordinarily strong morals and ethics, which were just evident in everything he did, but he never lectured or preached about it. It was just who he was, and through his questions or through his example, he'd get you there. And that's the experience all my brothers and sisters have. And so that's something we saw, you know, that we don't, you know, my dad lived about 400 yards from here. And between here and there, he became that guy. One of my closest friends from college spent a lot of time in New Mexico with me. And after a month or two, he was living in my parents' house. He said, you know, I don't think I've ever met anybody like Fred Hart. I said, yeah, I've heard that a lot. He says, no, you get this feeling that Fred Hart has never told a lie in his life. And I'm not sure I'm not saying he never told a lie, but I'm saying that's the feeling you got when you're around Fred, that his entire life was this experience of being him. You know, just being Fred Hart. Incredibly humble, self-deprecating, always giving credit to others, because he believed that was how you live a life.
If you look at my first year contract notes, you don't have any statements. You have series of questions. Right? And that was it. Every discussion was questioning. I want to add one other, which is Fred, besides his career, baseball. Yeah. His love of baseball, and especially the New York Giants, AKA the San Francisco Giants.
Still thinks they are in New York.
You would go up to his office, and he'd be working, and he had subscribed to the Giants baseball games. And he would be listening to the Giants baseball games.
The other legacy, the legacy of how he changed New Mexico law. And I was sat with my dad, my dad and my mom, she was still alive, November 2018, watching the returns come in. And you might remember it took a few days to get the returns back from the second congressional district because they had some hand counting. Anyway, so I wrote him a letter that night because it was kind of an extraordinary time for New Mexico. But so I used to write my dad letters all the time, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. But what I wrote about, you know, why he came to New Mexico, And that night, I just got a pencil and paper. I said, okay, New Mexico Supreme Court, 3 of the 5 justices are women. 3 are Hispanic, 4 of the 5 justices are your graduates. The New Mexico Court of Appeals, 8 of the 10 are women. 7 are UNM law graduates. 4 of the judges are Hispanic. 5 if you count Mike Vigil, who that day got elected to the Supreme Court. But our new governor is a woman, Hispanic, UNM law graduate. The new House of Representatives, the new House of Rep from the 1st Congressional District is a woman, Native American, UNM law graduate. The new U.S. House of Representative from the 2nd Congressional District is a woman, Hispanic, UNM law graduate. And 19 of the 27 judges just in this district, Bernalillo County, are UNM law graduates. 16 are women, 12 are people of color. 3 of them, 3 are African Americans and 1 Native American. And I was writing to him about this and going on about it and just making that observation. And my dad the next day called me and he said, shouldn't have taken 50 years. It shouldn't have taken 50 years.
What you should have said was that it wouldn't happen without you.
Well, that was the point of my letter was this: many people recognize my dad never took credit for anything. He would recognize the governors. He recognized the faculty that took a chance coming here. He recognized the UNM administration. And I was just sharing with him that, yeah, that's all probably true, but many folks think it might not have happened without him.
When I started law school here, whether it was because of our class, but we were all became so close because it was a family thing, and I think that was because of Fred Hart. I mean, I think he brought all of us in, and he let us told us, not really told us, but actually that we should all be together as a family. Just like Mike said about some of you will be here, it wasn't that way. It was a matter of putting us all together and letting us do it ourselves and make us.
When I started law school, my dad was dean for 1 year. He had been dean previously, but then they had a gap, and my dad had to fill in. They just had to get him. So I had heard these stories about the first day of law school, my father's having the entire class in 2401 and talking to them about what law school is going to be like. And there's that, it's kind of faded now, but there was historically there was this old movie, and the fiction was that the students would say, look to the left and look to the right, only one of you are going to be here. And my father didn't really want to play on that, but he said, look around the room, look at every one of you. Every one of you is going to graduate. Every one of you is going to graduate. And see these faculty members? Because he'd bring a bunch of faculty in. It's their job to see that you each graduate. It's our job to see you graduate. But some of the times, it's going to be because that student over there helps you, or that student over there helps you, or you help that student over there. And sometimes it's going to be because you're classmates. Sometimes it'll be our faculty, but sometimes it'll be your classmates. You're going to all get through this together. And I had heard, this is a speech I had heard played back to me several times, but I'd never actually been in the room. And it's a powerful thing to hear. It's a powerful thing to hear. Bonding the class together in that moment. It's going to be tough, and it's competitive, but we're a team, or we're a family. It's really more the image. We're going to get through this together, all of us. And then he'd just say, let's get to work, let's go.
And that strand runs through the summer program every summer, and the many cohorts of Native students that have come to go through the program, knowing that they're going to do it together. They're going to work with the faculty that we bring, and that whole thought is key to the success of the summer program that he started.
I am profoundly grateful for what Joan and Fred Hart did for me, recruiting me here. I mean, they changed my life so totally drastically, gave me opportunities I wouldn't have had anywhere else, any other state, any other place, just out of the blue. I mean, I had no concept. These things I came down here that first night. It wasn't a big deal to me. Turns out it was the biggest thing in my life. It was the most important thing that happened to me, other than, of course, marrying Jeff and having our son. But, I mean, seriously, changed everything.
The only thing I would say is he was my best friend. And, you know, he taught me both by a classroom and by my experience with him, but we became more than that. We became friends, we became partners in many endeavors with it, and that will stay with me for the rest of my life.
You know, I consider it to be an honor to be able to speak for Fred Hart. I mean, he was truly an amazing man. And the other thing I think about right now is how many people call the dean of the law school or his wife, Fred and Joan Hart. You just don't hear that at all. I mean, that's what he expected, but that's the way we addressed him. You don't call him, well, I guess I did for a while, as Dean Hart, but you always knew him as Fred Hart. And Joan was the same way. It was just the family. It was an amazing thing that the family did, and it was an honor to speak for him. I consider it one of the greatest honors I've had.
I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about Fred and what he's done, especially for the many, many classes of the summer program, the Pre-Law Summer Institute. The ability to talk a little bit about such a person that has had such an impact throughout Indian country.
All the wonderful things that my father did here and did professionally and did in politics and did, you know, in the community, you know, I got that person at home. And in fact, during COVID, just coincidentally, he let me open up my home office at his house because my house was a little chaotic. And so the last year and a half, I and a lot of my brothers and sisters got to spend a lot more time with him as he, you know, as he stopped teaching in the spring of 2020. And I can tell you that that it's really different to have a conversation with your dad when you're 60 and he's 91 than when you're, you know, 20 or 15. But he was the exact same guy. I mean, he was exactly the same person in 91. We're sitting there watching a ball game, having a conversation. And I'm just really grateful that I got that experience, you know, to be, in a weird way, COVID brought me a lot of those more experiences, but got that experience my whole life. I mean, from my entire life, I have had that figure. My son, who actually graduated this year, and my dad hooded him at home, but my son described his grandpa, Fred, my son is also named Fred, as he was like gravity. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, it's just this force. You know it's always there. It's just gravity. It's always consistent, never wavering, never changes. It just holds stuff together. That's my grandpa.